Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very special show. I have invited a gentleman who's gone through a really major transformation in his life, and as a result of that, he has come to serve our planet in some very interesting ways, which we'll be taking a look at today. And that gentleman is Henk Rogers. He is the founder of the Blue Planet Foundation. He lives on the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii, and he is making a difference in a world that we here at A Better World spend a lot of time looking at. Needless to say, that's the whole matter of global warming, carbon reduction, and what in the world we can do to create solutions to this incredibly difficult, challenging problem. We've had a number of people on talking about both, you could say, the diagnosis, how serious things are, and we've had a number of people talking about the solutions. Well, today, Henk is part of that world of solutions. We'll be learning a lot about that as we go on. So Henk Rogers, welcome so much to A Better World. So great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we really like, as I said before, to highlight people who are truly committed to a positive outcome and creating a better world, if you will. And we're particularly partial, if you will, to issues having to do with health and well-being and sustainability. And anytime we think about personal health, we're also thinking about planetary. You can't separate them. It's a true holistic, systemic worldview, right?
Right.
And you are one of those who exemplifies this systemic understanding, and you've made certain commitments that I'd love for you to share with our audience, what you're doing with the Blue Planet Foundation, and we'd love to actually hear some of your life story because it's really exemplary for our audience. So first of all, if you would tell us a little bit about the Blue Planet Foundation.
Blue Planet Foundation is a foundation originally meant to, how can I say, work on my mission. Mission number one for me is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. And came to this mission, well, that's a whole story that comes later. But the foundation primarily works in Hawaii. It does public outreach, education, and it does lots of creating new laws and lobbying to get those laws passed. And we've moved to Hawaii.
Environmental in nature for the benefit of Hawaii.
So it used to be like all renewable energy, but now it's renewable energy and renewable energy transportation. So we're on ground transportation as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's awesome. So you're involved in so many different levels, from children's education all the way up to the legislature in Hawaii to make a difference legally, if you will.
Yeah. Our biggest claim to fame is that we have a mandate of 100% renewable energy by 2045. And in fact, just last week, we got a law passed saying that no more coal will be burned for energy after 2022. So that shuts down the last coal-fired power plant in Hawaii.
Right, exactly. Well, I'll tell you, if A Better World and I can have any influence on your mission, Henk, it's going to be to bring this transformation of no fossil fuel in the state of Hawaii to about 2024. So,
that would be nice.
We'll talk. Nice. We'll talk. Right, exactly. Anyway, that is a wonderful mission. It's realistic. It's visionary. And you've already begun implementing it. So I know you're going to be taking us for a tour around the property for us to see the energy lab, etc. But as you asked for an introduction to the foundation through your beautiful little niece. So
okay,
jump into that?
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Want to share another thought before we...
Well, no, I was just, it's fine. I was thinking that we were going to talk about the history first. I didn't, I got thinking.
We can do that. You mean your personal history and
Yeah, I thought that's where we were
Please,
going to start. So let's
let's
just
do
get
that.
that out of the
That's
way.
the thing.
So,
Yeah. It's not, I don't want to get it
um,
out of the way, but I want to really
no, okay,
emphasize it
fine.
because it's very important.
So, I was born in the Netherlands, lived there for 11 years, moved to New York City when I was 11 years old, lived in New York for 8 years. And since some of your viewers are New York based,
Yes.
I lived in Queens and went to Our Lady of Sorrows for junior high school. And then I went to Stuyvesant High School when it was on 15th Street and First, and lived in Manhattan for 4 years.
Right
So you
around
could
the
say those are
corner.
my formative years. We protested against the war in Vietnam, and we were politically active. Then I moved to Hawaii and went to University of Hawaii. I became a surfer for about a year, and then went to University of Hawaii. And there was no action here at all. It was just such a strange thing. Well, anyway, long
In
story short,
comparison to New York, you mean?
oh my goodness,
Oh, wow.
I lived in a Mormon town, and the stores closed at 8 o'clock, and there was no liquor or no coffee. It's like from the streets of New York to the sand of Hawaii. It was amazing. That's, by the way, when I fell in love with the ocean and the coral and everything, and that will come
Sure.
back later. I went to I went to University of Hawaii. I majored in computer science and minored in Dungeons and Dragons. And
That's so funny. What does
I
that really mean?
it means that I quote unquote wasted a lot of time being a geek playing board games.
Yes.
And so people would say, like, wow, you're wasting so much time playing these stupid waste of time games, and well, it turned out to be 6 years later, personal computers came out in Japan, and I got to write the first role-playing game in Japan. So
Oh,
I used my my knowledge of role-playing and my passion for computing to make the game, and it was the one game in Japan in 1984, and it launched my company. I had a publishing company all of a sudden. So I wrote 2 games, and then started traveling around the world looking for games to bring to Japan, because I made a decision that programming is like being an athlete, and my years were numbered. And so I decided to work on the management side of the company. And so
mm-hmm.
I looked for games, and one of the games I found was a little game called Tetris. And so
That's
I
very
went
well
after
known.
that at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, of all places.
Yeah.
Well, the people that were selling it at that time just didn't know what they had. They just had no idea. They thought it was a small thing and it wasn't going to go anywhere. And so I went after the rights, and the next year I went to Moscow to get the Game Boy rights. And so I guess the biggest deal that I ever did up until then was to license Tetris from the Soviets and license it to Nintendo.
Oh.
And it's at that time that I made friends with the author of Tetris,
Mm-hmm.
and we became partners. We're still partners today. So we have something called the Tetris Company, which we formed in 1996. And if you add up all of Tetris in history, we sold about 80 million copies as box product, which means you go to a store and buy it in a box.
Yeah, of course.
And but the much bigger business happened after that on mobile phones. So we sold 500 million copies of Tetris as paid downloads. And today we've lost track because people don't pay for downloads anymore. They get the game for free and they buy items. And so it's a whole different economy, and it's hard to track how many downloads we have now.
Sure.
Just think about it. I think pretty much everybody who has a phone has Tetris on their phone somewhere.
Yes. So interesting. So you know how to have an impact.
Yeah. And so
put it mildly.
If you want to get to the part about why I started Blue Planet Foundation, fast you forward. I moved to Hawaii. I started a company to make games for mobile phones myself, because I couldn't find a licensee that was going to pay me enough money to make it interesting. Mm-hmm. So I said, I can do this. It's not that big of a deal.
Yes.
We got a it's such a goofy story, because when I was trying to license, I found the biggest company in the States, and they offered me $25,000. Okay, for the rights to Tetris. That was their bid, whatever. And I said, that's you guys have no idea.
They're starting offer.
3 years later, that same company bought my company for over $100 million. And all we had was Tetris for mobile phones. That was it. So they could have, if they'd have. So anyway, a month
it's
after
the new mathematics.
There you go. There you go. So a month after I sold my company, I was playing tennis and I didn't feel well. They asked me if I wanted to call an ambulance, and they did. So they came and checked me out. They said, there's nothing really wrong. We'll take you in for observation. We're not even going to turn on the siren. Well, guess what happened? Halfway to the hospital, the siren went on.
Oh.
And the guy who was taking care, the paramedic, was in the cockpit. Like, you know, he was giving instructions to the hospital to get ready because, and he, 2 days later, he told me he didn't think I was going to make it. So my heart attack happened in the ambulance. I'm looking at the ceiling and going, you've got to be kidding me. I haven't spent any of the money yet. That was the first thing I thought. And the second thought, second thing I thought is, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. And so, I mean, if I have to hold my breath for the next 15, and this is like surfing thinking, because I remember those words saying, you know, when I was drowning once, it's like, no, I'm not going to die today. I still have stuff to do. So anyway, they rolled me into the operating room from the ambulance. The cardiologist was there. I signed the paper. I have 2 stents. Oh my God. It's so like amazing that amount of damage. It was 100% blockage of the widowmaker. It would have absolutely killed me if I hadn't been within 15 minutes of a hospital. And yet I left 4 days later with 2 Band-Aids. But anyway, this episode, while I was in the recovery room, I'm thinking, what did I mean by stuff? You know, I've already made enough money. My kids are already out of school. What do I mean by stuff? And so I looked at it from the end of my life. So what's going to happen when I'm like 90 or 100, whatever? I look back on my life. Yes. What's going to upset me if I haven't done anything about it? And that's how I found my missions in life. My first mission is to end the use of carbon-based fuel, because in the back of the newspaper, I read a little article and said, oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. I'm going like, you idiots, do you have any idea what that means? And it was like the Hawaii newspaper. So you'd think that would be the most important news in Hawaii ever.
Front page.
It was a tiny little article in the back, like, oh, by the way, you know, and nobody paid attention to it. Yeah. And so what's causing that? It's carbon dioxide going into the ocean, which is causing ocean acidification. And then I looked into carbon dioxide and find out, oh, it's doing all this other nasty stuff like climate change and sea level rise. And so my first mission is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. And to that end, I started a foundation called the Blue Planet Foundation. And rather than me explain what the foundation does, I'm going to have my niece, who's 7 years old. 7 years old. She practiced all day to get her line straight for this piece. So roll the video.
So adorable. Absolutely. Thank you for all that.
Hawaii is our home. But our home is changing.
Breaking news on Kauai tonight. Devastating flooding, widespread damage. Homes on the verge of collapsing.
The world is changing.
The largest wildfires in the state of California. Tonight, the rain is over, but the disaster is not.
I worry sometimes when I think about my future. What will it be like when I grow up? Would it be like what my parents remember? Climate change scares me. But we know that it doesn't have to be this way. We can change. That's why I'm grateful for Blue Planet Foundation. For the past 10 years, Blue Planet has been leading the way for clean energy. They think if we can do it in Hawaii, we can show the entire world what a clean energy future looks like. They brought together hundreds of students just like me to be a part of the change.
All right, now everybody get your signs. Everybody.
They joined their families and neighbors to draw the line on climate change.
Our voices really matter, and us being here today is showing something and showcasing to the world that we really care about this issue and we want to take a stand.
And in 2015, their efforts paid off when Hawaii passed our country's first 100% renewable energy law. It's nice to know when I grow up, all our energy will come from clean sources. And now Blue Planet is growing. The Repower Project is working to bring Hawaii's 100% renewable energy law to other states. Now Blue Planet is active every day, making this change happen. They are in our classrooms and in our communities. We still have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do. I'm excited about the new future we are creating. We can help solve our climate crisis, starting in Hawaii, and we'll inspire the world. But we can't do it alone. Will you help? For my future.
Oh my. That's powerful.
She's going to be, I think she's going to be an actress someday.
Yes. You started her going. That's great.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a good cause. That's beautiful. It's so, you're reaching many generations with what you're doing. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for this because it's so important. It's one thing for we adults to do what we can to turn things around, reverse global warming, reduce the carbon footprint. This is fantastic. But to give young ones the education they need to live a life that's sustainable and renewable from the beginning is invaluable. So just to say that, Henk, it's important. So thank you for that. Well, I know we're about to do a tour.
Before I'd just like to, I'll lead up to it. So, so our greatest accomplishment to date is probably the mandate, where all of Hawaii needs to get its electricity from renewable resources by 2045. We didn't just say it and make a law, we actually followed up. So the next phase of that was that we worked on changing the business model of the utility so they make more money the quicker they switch to renewables. So guess what? Now their shareholders are on our side.
Yeah.
So
this is a law. This is not just your declaration. This is
no. First of all, there's a mandate that says no more fossil fuel after 2045. Means anything that's existing at that moment has to be turned off. So it doesn't make any sense for the utility to make any more fossil fuel infrastructure because they're going to have to turn it off. That's the deal. But we followed it up, as I'm saying. We followed it up by changing the business model of the utility, which used to be they make 10% on top of the price of oil. And well, now their business model is make more money because oil, when you think of fossil fuel, it costs them 20 cents per kilowatt hour, the utility, and then they sell it to us for like 32 cents. Renewable energy, wind and solar, are down at somewhere around 8 cents. They should be selling us that for whatever price where they make more money and we pay less for the electricity. So that formula has actually gotten them to come up with an RFP, a request for proposal for 800 megawatts of renewable energy last year. That's half of Hawaii. So say that all happens, in 5 years, we'll be halfway there. So I think we're going to get there way before 2045.
Oh, good.
So that's where we are.
Yeah.
Well, then I'd like to talk a little about my personal story. So we got to a point in Hawaii. We passed a law that helped the solar industry, and so solar installers popped up like crazy. At the peak, we had like 200 solar installer companies in Hawaii. And we originally planned for there to be about, the law would bring maybe 30 megawatts of solar, but in 2 years we had 300 megawatts of rooftop solar. And then the electric company goes, no, we can't handle that much variable energy on the grid.
Were
So
they
I'm
giving
thinking-
tax credits to help to induce that?
So yeah. So we did have a tax rebate for putting solar on your roof, rooftop solar. That was on our side, on the foundation side. We did that.
Yes.
But the electric company basically, because the idea is you should connect your solar panels to your house, and your house is connected to the grid. And then when it's too much energy falling on your roof, you basically give it or sell it to the electric company, and
Right.
then at night when there's no, you get it back. So the electric company is your battery.
Yes.
But then the electric company said, no, we can't handle that much variation, because when clouds come or when the
Sure.
wind, so
It's
they
too
need
intermittent for them.
too intermittent for them. So I started thinking, okay, so how do we fix that? And the answer is storage. We have to store the energy that happens during a sunny day or a windy day, and we have to store it for when the sun is not shining, like at night, or when the wind's not blowing. So we started thinking about studying energy storage, and the facility behind me here was originally, I watched the movie when I was a kid, Our Man Flint, and he had a laboratory, like Iron Man has a laboratory, we can make anything. I wanted one of those. So I built one, and then this building found a purpose, and it's to study renewable energy. So let me show you a little bit about the building. In fact, I should turn the camera backwards. Can I? How do I do that? Stop video.
There's a little
Bang.
icon of a camera.
There you go. Got it. So this is the energy lab. And the energy lab,
Very cool.
of course,
Look at
the
those
panels
solar
are facing,
panels.
yeah, there are 360 of them on this roof. And so it's how can I say, this way is south and that way is north.
Mm-hmm.
The way this building is designed is it's optimum for the
Exactly. You're
for-
maximizing the solar exposure.
Can I just have somebody say hello?
Sure.
Hello there.
Hi. A little
Hey there.
goat.
Hey there, come here. You know you're in the
Nibble on
country.
the solar panels, please.
Yeah. A little pet goat. Anyway, 360
great.
panels on the roof.
I feel
And
like
we
we're in
have-
Hawaii with you, Hank. It's fantastic.
You totally are. Look at the sky.
Oh,
Sorry, but we got this, Anyway,
yeah. New
so
York is good,
360
but this is a special.
so 360 panels, 85 kilowatts of peak power, and we store the energy in batteries. And in fact, that is that's a business that I've started, and we do it for other people now. So let me take you quickly around and show you.
And what kind of batteries are you using? What kind of chemistry, etc.?
We will get there.
Step by step. This is a beautiful walkway.
So
Aha.
these are the batteries. So let me explain to you a little bit about the battery chemistry. Oop. I can just do this. Can you still see me?
Oh, yeah.
So these are the batteries. So I went through a period where we tried to use a chemistry called vanadium redox. And it's a year that I would consider, you could say I wasted a year. The company was bought by the Chinese. We never heard from them anymore, and this stuff stopped working. So I said the next battery is going to be made by a company that's still going to be around 20 years from now,
Yes.
and a chemistry that I'm not going to be sorry that I have it at my ranch. Okay, so then we went through a search for a new battery. The chemistry that we landed on is lithium iron phosphate. Now, lithium iron phosphate are all benign chemicals, which means that at the end of life, you can just landfill them, fill these batteries, and they won't damage the environment. And here's an interesting thing. We're at 68% of charge. So it's the batteries are charging right now.
Yes.
I'm touching the batteries.
Oh.
I can barely feel that they're warmer than ambient temperature. So these batteries don't get hot. They don't need a cooling system, which means there's never going to be a thermal runaway. You know, like the Samsung batteries or the lithium-ion batteries, when you go on a plane, you're not supposed to put them in your luggage because they might
their potential
spontaneously combust.
Explosion, right.
This will never happen to this chemistry because it's a benign chemistry. And so we're not spending any energy cooling these batteries, and they're non-toxic.
I was going to ask.
I mean, yeah. So
wow. That's a big deal.
This is 20 kilowatt hours. So original bank of 5 is 100 kilowatt hours.
And how is its efficiency next to lithium-ion batteries, which are, you know, typically fairly popular, Tesla, etc.
So I'm going to flip back. So good. Okay. Yeah. So when you think about the Tesla batteries, that's lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, cobalt. And that chemistry, these are lithium ion as well. They're both lithium ion, but it's what's on the other side that's different.
Oh, I see.
Lithium on one side and iron phosphate on the other side. That's what this is. So we're probably, you know, they fudge the numbers because they don't actually count the energy that it takes to cool the batteries.
You're freezing a little bit there. They don't count the energy that it takes to cool the batteries, you said. Come back. We don't hear you, Henk.
Okay, I'm working on it.
There you are.
Let's see,
There you are. You're back.
All right.
Okay. Well, for a moment.
Okay. Yeah. So, am I coming through?
You just flipped to photo instead of your video.
All right. Better?
You're coming back.
I switched to Wi-Fi.
There you are.
I switched to Wi-Fi.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to stay inside and do the rest of the show from inside.
Sure.
So where were we? Yes.
So about the chemistry and the safety.
Yes.
And
So we're
about
somewhere between 97, 98% efficient because our batteries don't waste any energy overheating.
Yes.
And there's no
element is removed, so that changes efficiency dramatically.
Yeah.
Remarkable. Now, how do you go from where you are now to implementing this on, in this case, a statewide basis in order to get the results you're looking for of no fossil fuel by 2045?